On this note of overestimating the threat of nuclear, early days, you kind of alluded to this in the context of AI in that article with Kissinger, right? I mean, you talked about how people or actually should be thinking about AI the way we thought about nuclear.
Yes.
Talk about that.
All of Kissinger's life, and indeed for almost all of my professional life, the nuclear sword of Damocles, as it was thought of, or the nuclear cloud encompassing your country or maybe even the world, has been the specter, the dominant specter. And the reason why is that if you've ever actually looked to see what happens when there's the explosion of a nuclear bomb, I mean, if you haven't, you say, whoever is your listener should go online and watch, see what happens. Basically, this is not like any other bomb or form of destructive power that we've ever seen before. This creates such a release of heat and energy that things simply disappear. Things as big as a whole city. So if we were to have a nuclear war, it could literally be the case at the end of it, there would be no living Americans and no living Chinese. Right. Maybe even no living human beings, because it's the after effect of this. So you look and you say, okay, well, this is genuinely Armageddon. This is end of the world. Okay. For Henry, who had lived as a kid in Germany as the Nazis were coming to power and who escaped with his family, even though other members of his family died in the Holocaust, his family remembered very well World War I, a 25-year intermission, and World War II, and Nazism. So he had a kind of idea, World War I, World War II. And actually, when I became a graduate student, and the student of Kissinger, this is 1965, everybody thought there would be World War III. And World War III would be certainly at least on the same exponential path as the difference between World War II and World War I. Maybe even would be a full-scale nuclear war. Maybe would even kill hundreds of millions of people. So having that history and then recognizing that even though there were people at the time who were quite pessimistic, fatalistic, because look, there's been great power wars forever. There have been World Wars I, II, III. What can we do about this? There had been nonetheless another group of people who said, well, this is a challenge for statecraft. Yeah. And Kissinger was among the people who both thought about this and then wrote about it. So with that backdrop, maybe 5, 6 years ago, Henry, when we were talking about other stuff, he said, Graham, we need to learn about AI. And I said, he was 95 years old. I said to Henry, it's not your topic. You don't have any background in science. I told him actually that he didn't know the difference between a computer chip and a potato chip. And he said, I know, but Eric Schmidt has said that he'll give us a tutorial. So I said, okay.
They wrote a book together, too.
Yeah. So he began trying to learn about it. Yeah. But what had come into his consciousness was the notion that now you're talking about a creation of machines that may be smarter than human beings, maybe a lot smarter, and which, if connected to, for example, technologies that allow you to create new pathogens, could create something 100 times worse than COVID. And then if they were to release this, what could happen? So the number of analyses of AI that are basically dystopian. I mean, there's a whole bunch of novels in this space. Yeah. The machines decide to kill off all the men, or the machines decide to make the human beings their slaves, or whatever. So you don't know what the future there. But the people who work at the frontier of AI I think, have been credible enough about the possibility that there may be genuinely catastrophic applications of AI, that we should then think, well, did we learn anything from the nuclear story and from that history that might be relevant in thinking about the AI? So the purpose of that foreign affairs piece was to say, nuclear is not AI. They're very different. Nonetheless, from this history, we can learn some clues that may be relevant for dealing with it. And then we were urging the U.S. and China, because they are currently now the two AI superpowers, to begin talking about that. Fortunately, Biden did talk about that. And now there's an active discussion about having both a track 1 and a track 2 conversation about how constraints could be created. So I think obviously different, but I take both from the nuclear story.
Right.
First, inspiration. There's no reason to be fatalistic.
Right.
And secondly, there's even some instruction and clues about items. So you would say, well, okay, if the U.S. and China are really rivals in AI, well, then can there be anything about which they can agree? Now, in the nuclear arena, where at the time we were even clearer that both the U.S. and the Soviet Union were trying to bury each other, nonetheless, it didn't take them very long to figure out that if the two of us have nuclear weapons, that's not as good as just me having them, but that's better than having a lot of people having them. So that they had a common interest in trying to slow the spread of nuclear weapons, and they did. So that's an example. Could you imagine in the training of new large language models in the AI space that the two parties at least agree that they're going to have some guidelines and licensing of the process to make sure that if I get one of these, I'm not using it or misusing it? Well, maybe. Again, complicated. So I would say it's an analogy that at least stimulates the imagination.